Dissection, now filmed before a live studio audience.
Woo!
Thanks. All right. Well,
we have a special guest. he's
my
fine.
dog Maxie. Hi, buddy.
He's here. He's chilling. He wants to stay, so we're gonna leave him.
All right. You want to get into it?
Yeah. How you doing? You been good since the last episode?
Yeah, it's been a minute. It's been a minute since the last time we filmed, and there was kind of a big gap between the last time I played, but we got like a total of 1, maybe 2 sessions in since the last time. So there's gonna be something to talk about at least.
Yeah. We did do the Blades in the Dark session.
A lot of fun.
That was pretty cool. I'm excited to get into it. Besides that, not a whole lot going on.
I feel that.
So, I guess we'll just begin with just a summary of how the session went.
Yeah, a little session recap.
Yeah, we'll start with Blades. So, the party began, kind of with this. I wanted to throw them into like the fire a little bit in the beginning, just so that they can like flex out their abilities and see how skills worked in the new system, because everyone's like used to D&D and things are backwards in Blades in the Dark.
And one thing you definitely have to prepare for when you're running in a new system is that your players will probably not read the instructions.
No. I didn't expect anyone really to, which is why I printed out all those handouts,
Yep.
just so that we could refer to it really quickly. That's something I will say is a good thing to do, is print out at least some cheat sheet, something. Blades in the Dark came with one pre-made, which was really cool.
Yeah.
But not all systems do, so if you have to, you should make one yourself. But yeah, they started out in the streets, some blue coats, which were kind of like bounty hunters of New London. Were like asking questions around their turf, so they tried to get away from them. I'm pretty sure Josh's character ended up in like a heat vent,
Stuck in the vents.
yeah. of the butcher shop. There's like some tense moments in the beginning, but all in all, they were able to like get out of that situation.
It was hilarious. It was a riot. I mean, we started the session in medias res, kind of had to figure out who everyone's character was.
Yeah.
It was like a hilarious little hullabaloo.
But I think everyone like got to like show kind of what their role was in the group, just in that little segment.
Yep.
I thought it was pretty cool. After that, the crew went back to their lair at the wharf, their workshop.
Yep.
And they got a letter. It was actually just a flyer with 3 names on it to an event that was going to happen in a week. They had received notes like this before, so they kind of knew what was going on. These were their marks. So they had a week to prepare for this hit, to assassinate these 3 people. They didn't really know who those 3 people were, except for one, which was
Billy Billions.
Billy Billions, kind of a prolific entertainer worldwide. And he was going to come to London on a train that like circles around the world. He like performed in all sorts of, like he performed in Japan, Australia before that, and now he's come to London. And they were going to kill him, supposedly.
Hey man, a job's a job.
Yeah. So, but they didn't know who the other 2 people were. They just had their names, George and Markham. So they take the week and they start calling up all their contacts. They, going through their, on their character sheets, they had marked allies and rivals that they had before.
Just a little Blades in the Dark thing.
Yeah, like they have on the character cards some options for people in the past. So they, went around, did the rounds, and ended up conscripting some people to help them get clothes. They got the pugilist to carry some chum in
Yep.
to the truck. That was pretty cool. They got some information from Max's contact, the spy.
Yep.
Which they're able to learn who George was. George is a zoologist. He studies like the wildlife out in the Deathlands is what they call it. Most of the world is kind of like this frozen wasteland, and only certain kinds of animals can survive there, and he collects those. So they got information on those two, but they still had no idea who Markham was. And then came time for the hit. A week had passed. So they show up with this initial plan to cart chum in to the train, as the food.
It was a great idea. We were the catering service.
It was awesome. But
except they already had catering service.
Yeah,
so,
they didn't think about the fact that they probably already had food. They made some rolls. Josh's character, Bugging Out, ended up getting pulled into the train as he was doing very poorly on intimidating the guards. So he gets pulled all the way through to the back of the train where the mercenaries were kind of holding up, putting all their weapons, and he was getting interrogated. The rest of the party kind of made their way into the main entry car, doing normal party activities. One thing I will say, I mentioned a tube along the top of the train.
Yeah.
And the party took note of that, and they tried to get into it, and I wanted it to be this really cool thing, but unfortunately they didn't do so good on their rolls.
Yeah, we couldn't wreck it.
Yeah. Which it happens. Cool things sometimes just get lost to bad rolls. But regardless, the party pressed on and kind of investigating the rest of the train. There were some areas that were off limits to them that they were able to sneak into anyway. For example, the Hall of Fortune. Our boys Blackball and Lockjaw were able to kind of court their way into. There's some pretty cool antics there. It's kind of hard to tell the order in which things happened.
It's a little bit hard to remember, but I think that's kind of by nature of the way that the system works.
Yeah. With
all sorts of flashbacks and with a split party constantly cutting back and forth.
Yeah. Things kind of happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
But we kind of work with movie logic, right? We'll just go in the order that we kind of saw them.
Yeah.
But Charlie's character was investigating the fourth room, the general admission, and was sabotaging doors, making it so people couldn't get off the train with the stairway if they were running off, and sort of investigating it. Actually, Charlie was the character who interacted with Markham for the first time. Someone who was also on the train for some shady business. It wasn't really clear in the beginning. But things really sort of hit the fan when Bugging Out in the PPO room, the private personnel only room.
Yep.
Was able to knock out one of the guards.
Yes.
And escape. That's when I started ticking up these timers. You can kind of see here I've got these circles. They're what we call the clocks in the system, and they're just sort of ways of adding consequences and raising the stakes for players in an abstract way that may not always directly relate to what they just did. So for example, as you fail checks, you have to take on consequences, and one of them was the guards becoming alert, or reinforcements arriving, or this last one, which was the train getting upset. After Bugging Out escaped the back room, he put on the clothes of the guards and was impersonating them. People around were none the wiser. Surprisingly,
he had some great roles.
Yeah, he was doing pretty good. and the party converges in the Hall of Fortune, bugging out Lockjaw and Blackball.
And of course, in the Hall of Fortune, there are statues of very rich people around the world, and Lockjaw, has to get one of these coins. Like, they've got coins embedded in the statues, and Lockjaw has to get one.
So they're trying to like pry it out, and they're actually able to get the one from Emperor Kaneda's statue. But like it has a little bit of his like statue still chunked onto it, but they've got it. They'll be able to get it off later.
Yep.
That comes to bite them later on, as one of these statues is now missing, like the most valuable part of the statue. But because of Bugging Out's costume, his what do you call that?
Disguise.
Yeah, disguise. Sorry.
Sorry.
I was totally
Design, dissection, disguise. I mean, it's kind of a logical progression.
Because of the disguise, they're able to sneak into the showroom before it's actually opened. So no one's in there. Supposedly that's where Billy Billions is going to be performing this evening in about an hour. So they post up in the showroom waiting for him. When they get in there, there's someone dancing on stage. Someone who like works on the train. And immediately upon seeing them, he books it to the front of the train.
And of course we have to chase.
Yeah, so, someone who's not supposed to be there, they're seen, they give chase. They chase to the front of the train, and
shit starts to go down.
Yeah, things kind of I'm trying to remember exactly the order. I think what happened next, they catch him, they interrogate him, and they learned that he was also not supposed to be there, which is why he ran. Upon seeing them, he thought he was going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Lockjaw gets this idea to commandeer the train by going to the front of the engine. So they go using their newfound pal, who they've coerced into sort of helping them,
and our trusty harpoon guns.
Yeah,
and harpoon pistols.
You guys used harpoon guns as the unusual. No, that wasn't the unusual.
That was my unusual weapon. Max's unusual weapon was even more unusual. It was a rabid ferret launcher.
Like a gun where you fire a ferret. Nonsensical. But they make it to the front of the train, and there are people shoveling coal into the forges, basically. And Lockjaw opens fire.
I'm not gonna lie, we all kind of opened fire.
Yeah.
It was one of those, if one of us goes in, we kind of all have to go in moments, and we showed up. We showed up. We packed the heat. We killed most of them.
Yeah.
Injured a few of them.
I don't know why, but you guys rolled terribly, except on the rolls to kill people. You guys were just killing machines, which you guys were assassins.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I expected going into this. You guys killed most of the people who were shoveling coal into the train. But the remainder of them, you guys kind of forced to help you.
Yeah.
So you guys had control of the train from that point on. Now, going on in the general admission room at the same time, Charlie's character had found a massive crate, which was kind of being carted into the PPO room. And he had loosened some of the nails in this crate. He didn't know exactly what was in it. Which was a European death frog. It's actually a callback to our first session of Practice Bar, where I ran like this little mini one-shot while we waited for our DM to show up.
Because the DM was hanging out with me in Orlando.
Yeah.
We kind of lost track of time.
But this European death rug, what's special about it is that if you touch it, you die, in short. It kind of sucks your soul out of your body. There's a big supernatural element to Blades in the Dark that we didn't get into too much in the session, which I felt was a good decision because there was a lot already going on with the new rules.
And we didn't really build into any of the supernatural stuff either.
Right.
There are some classes, I think they call them playbooks, that are kind of geared more towards the supernatural aspect of Blades in the Dark, but we were like, yeah, I mean, for a one-shot, probably not going to be super relevant. And if it is, then it's just going to be pretty funny.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Charlie's character is sort of like locked in. So he undoes the nails in this, and he's like kind of like setting things up all around the train. But it's kind of hard for him to regroup with the party because of like how on the opposite side of the train they are. Like they're all the way in the front of the engine. Charlie's in the back. But after you guys commandeer the front of the train, you guys decide, okay, we need to find these people. Like, we've gone, like, the first hour.
And nobody.
None of the three have shown up. So, you and Charlie
decided to go on top of the train.
Yeah.
We were like, all right, you guys keep the other two, Max and Josh. We were like, yeah, you guys keep watching the showroom. We're going to go towards the back, the very back, the like last car that we haven't visited, behind the PPO room. And we're like, yeah, you know what? We'll just go on top of the train.
I was so hoping for it. No, I had planned for there to be like an overpass, but you guys had already like
the problem we created was much worse.
It was so much better that I was like, there doesn't even need to be an overpass. You guys make their way back to the PPO room, and do you want to just talk about your plan?
Yeah. So. Oh, geez. Our plan was, one of the great things about Blades in the Dark is the way that the inventory works is you have a certain number of slots of like objects that you can have in your inventory, and you don't have to decide what objects are in your inventory until you need them. So you kind of have like a certain number of things, and you can decide what they are on the fly. So I decided I had some dynamite in my inventory, and we were like, all right, so we're going to this car in the back, like the party car, had we couldn't find any of our marks anywhere else on the train, and we were like, well, they've got to be in here. So we were planning on etching the glass in the top, popping it out, dropping the dynamite, and detonating it. However, another great Blades in the Dark mechanic is the flashback. So you can incur a little bit of stress to make something happen retroactively. So retroactively, Josh's character bugging out. Josh had a flashback. He's like, you know what, my contact, I've got this friend. She put like a box of explosives on the train, and he rolled such that we didn't know which car it was going to be on. So Houston rolled a d6. 6 cars, there's a 1 in 6 chance it's in the car that Charlie and I are on top of. And of course,
it had to be.
And Josh's character had no idea. So he lights it up. And as we're planning to blow up this car in the back, literally, like, the car that we're standing on, we lose our footing. It explodes underneath us.
Yeah. So they were going to suffer the consequence of a 3rd level harm and falling off the train,
which is pretty bad.
Yeah.
I mean, third level harm is you need help. You're pretty much out of the hit at that point.
But them falling off the train would have been way worse because then they literally would have been out of the hit.
Yeah.
So they decide to resist that. You can resist any consequence that's given to you by taking on more stress. And there's like a weird way to calculate it, but that's basically how it works. So they resist falling off the train. And instead I have them get blown onto 2 separate cars on the opposite side of the burning car.
I land right where I need to be, right on top of the glass of the back car. All these people are looking up at me now.
Yeah.
Charlie ends up on the the entry room, the admission room, and we got to work our way back to each other.
Yeah, so Charlie is on top of the general admission room, and he has to work his way through this burning car, which is where all of these animals that George had, were being stored. Now these animals are durable, so they survived.
But their crates are not so durable.
Their crates are not, so they're free. The death frog comes for Charloine here. And things are seemingly looking grim, but he pulls out the devil's bargain, and he receives help from an unlikely source. One of the animals, the Queen is her name. She's a massive black panther. Comes and defends him, not necessarily for him, but because it's been wanting to eat this death frog for the last couple of weeks, and it's hungry. So it kind of fends it off for him.
Shuffling dangers, though.
Yeah, just danger for a danger. Taking a few burns on the way, he makes it through this burning PPO car to the party room.
Yep.
The rave in the back, where Black Ball is currently on top of.
Yep.
So from that, the top of the rave had a glass roof.
Yep.
So Black Ball positions the dynamite on top.
Yeah, my character, based off of Roy Kent, shout out Ted Lasso, started out with a bum knee, just kind of as a role play thing, and the second level harm that I got was another bum knee. So I can't walk at this point. I take off my trench coat. I've still got the dynamite. I etch a big old circle, leave the dynamite on the etched glass, pop it out, and crawl my way, pull myself along the glass roof off of the car, let Charlie's character catch me, and I'm like, all right, man, I'm gonna hobble off behind us. You gotta fire at the give me a second here. Phone call. Scam calls are crazy these days. Anyways, I'm like, all right, Charlie, you got one chance. This dynamite's falling through the roof. I need you to shoot it, man. Light it up.
So the thing is, everyone in this car is panicking because, one, a bomb just went off. And they all want to get out of this room. They all want to get off the train if they can. So they are basically piling out of the door that Charlie needs to get through.
Yep.
So he makes a check. He pulls out a gun, and he has a flashback to his therapist, where he talks about why he has it. And this is I think the most triumphant moment of the heist of the hit, where I didn't expect this to happen in the session, but there was development somehow in there. He weaseled it in there, and using the gun, he's able to intimidate the people to back away and let him in. At which point he fires the shot at the glass and Down comes the dynamite.
Yep.
And kaboom. It was wild.
So, the only people that we killed in combat were innocents.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you could, as far as you could say innocent, you killed a lot of mercenaries. I wouldn't really...
That's fair. Well, the engineers.
Yeah, the engineers.
They were probably innocent.
The people in the rave were probably innocent.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we did a bunch of killing, didn't hit any marks, and then boom, boom, we light up the back 2 cars of this train, completely demolished.
So I figured, you know what? If they just blow up 2 of the cars, they probably hit their hits. You know what I mean? Like 2/6 of the car, and they explored the rest of it. So they had killed George and Markham. I had already decided that Markham was going to be in the back, and George was going to be in the PPO car. But they were still looking for Billy.
Yeah.
Where in the front showroom, Bugging Out and Lockjaw were waiting.
Yeah.
And waiting. Some people did end up coming. Some more mercenaries came. They dealt with them. And then some nobles showed up. Some people from the entry car that they had met in the beginning. Spider came in and was acting confused at first. But it quickly became clear that she was also here to kill Billy.
Redundant systems.
Yeah.
Somebody wanted this job done.
Exactly.
No matter what.
So they kind of like they have some antagonism, Spider and the party, but they realize they're here for the same thing, so they kind of get along. Bugging Out and Spider sort of have this weird.
After everybody has taken a bullet wound.
Yeah. everyone gets shot.
They kind of had a little Mexican standoff, and then they all shot each other, and they were like, wait.
Yeah. Yeah. He never comes. They wait, and the train comes back. It finishes the London loop and arrives back at the station, where there's a crowd of people waiting because a burning train has just been circling the city. The Bluecoats arrive and they're prepared to just arrest everyone in the train car. And this is kind of like the final challenge of not get arrested.
Yeah.
And Bugging Out pulls the most bullshit flashback I've ever seen. He pulls out a document written by Billy Billions stating that he thought he was going to be assassinated, and he essentially pardons everyone who survives this train attack, and through some stroke of sixes he succeeds. And they get away scot-free.
He clutch boxed I mean, I don't think we realized up until that point how everything rode on that one roll. It was so disproportionately important.
Yeah.
He got away with it.
He got away with it. And they were Bugging Out was still going to have to be brought to the station for questioning to investigate like the legitimacy of this document. But as far as the party was concerned, they had won.
Yeah.
And in the final flashback, or not the final flashback, the final cutscene of the session, Billy is out in the crowd, disguised as just a commoner. And he hops on to the destroyed rave car, retrieves a pen of his, and remarks about how the job was done.
These son of a bitches actually did it.
Yeah.
They actually killed Billy Billions.
Yeah. So effectively faking his death, that was the session.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I had no idea where it was going the whole time.
It was such a riot. I mean, we had decided beforehand like what kind of team that we wanted to be, and we just loved the idea of being assassins who, like, we don't do a clean job. We use these harpoon guns. We grind the bodies down into chum. Like, it's gross, it's messy, but we get the job done. And it was so hilarious the way that things shook out.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world, honestly. I love how it played out. It was the best. Going into this, should we do the after questions? Like, I guess as a player, did you have any questions about it?
Yeah, I guess my big question was, what was the deal with the ghost in the tube in the train? We didn't really get to. It was kind of like a plot line that didn't end up going anywhere, just because we lacked the capacity to break through this tube.
Right. So one thing I always do when I prepare sessions, I like lore. I just love it. So I took some time to write like the origin of this train. And this train is actually a living thing. It's what they call a hull. They mentioned that, and like one of the NPCs mentioned that.
Yeah.
About how this is this new technology of putting souls into machines. But this train is one of those. It's it used to be a demon named Zil. But he felt like his mortal form was too weak. So he asked his friend Switch to turn him into a train. And so he kind of like powers this train that goes around, and he used to be the demon of disasters, which played perfectly into what transpired here on this train. He actually hates Billy, and he wanted him dead. So he was going to work with the party if they had time to interact with him, but unfortunately they didn't. The ghost in the tubes was him. And if you had like broken into it, you could talk with him, and he could transport you to any train or any car on the train. I felt like the train was sort of linear, like you can see here, like it's just like a straight line, and I didn't want to like literally railroad my players despite them being on a rail.
Yeah.
So I wanted them to be able to like move about the train as they wished.
It worked out pretty all right.
Yeah, despite that, because you guys ended up going in separate directions anyway.
Yeah.
But that was like kind of like the thing with the ghost in the tube. It was just a sort of a transportation method.
Makes sense, yeah. Another question I had was, what's the origin of Billy Billions? So I know that you had posted a poem in our Discord server like quite a while ago. And one of the things that we do is sometimes put a funky name for like the author, and you put Billy Billions. So what's the lore there? What's the story there?
So that poem, Billy Billions is kind of one of my alter egos, I guess.
Gotcha.
He's like the one that wants to succeed financially, but not just that. Like he wants the fame too.
Yeah.
And it's just like kind of like one of the shards of me. Like it makes it better if I like externalize all of my negative traits onto some fictional character.
That's awesome.
So Billy Billions is just the bad me, I guess, if I wanted fame and fortune exclusively. But yeah, that's him.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah,
and he got away with it.
Yeah, he did. The thing is, you guys in the very beginning, you kind of like got a little bit of lore on Billy from the spy as well.
Yeah.
His brother actually wanted him dead. And his brother hired Spider and Markham to kill him. So
oh, wow.
He counter-hired you guys.
Us to kill him.
But he also hired you to kill the person who's going to kill him.
Oh, yeah. Markham was the Spider's associate, right?
Yeah. He didn't know who the Spider was, but he knew Markham was coming to kill him.
Gotcha. Wow.
So it was like a way to kill his enemies and also make the rest of the world think he was gone. So no one tried to kill him again.
That's awesome.
But yeah, that's kind of how it ended up playing out. I didn't plan too much in the session. Like that whole like arc was like something I considered as a possibility, but I didn't want to just shoehorn it in if it didn't line up with how you guys went about the heist. Like I was willing to change the ending if there was a more satisfying conclusion.
Gotcha.
But I think it worked out well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I think that kind of concludes. Unless from the crowd, do we have any other questions about the hit?
I think somewhere along the line,
you might have to speak up for the mic.
Well, if you guys can hear it, you can maybe reiterate it in context.
We'll put it above us.
Got it. Okay.
think somewhere along the line, I was just so fascinated about the balance between the improvisation and the not, because I know, Houston, you let us know, you were straight up, you were like, probably very little of this is going to be prepared. What was the scariest, was there a scary moment for you? And if so, what was the scariest moment as far as flying by the seat of your pants goes over the course of the session?
So the question was, what is the scariest moment as far as flying by the seat of my pants during the session? It was the moment that I realized your guys' method of killing the hits was not going to allow you to confirm whether you killed them or not. You guys were just bombing train cars full of people.
If you hadn't told us, we would have bombed the rest of them.
Yeah, you guys would have just bombed the whole train. So I at that point I was like, crap. This is just not going to work. There's no way that like the session could continue. But I resolved that by just kind of like having a meta, like, I'm just going to say as people are dead, just for the sake of this being a one shot. I don't know. I thought it could have been cool to have like you have to get like a trophy from your kill to confirm it.
Yeah.
But I didn't think about that in the beginning of the session, and I worried that like throwing it in the middle would have been kind of like hard to communicate.
That's fair. Well, I will say you handled it masterfully, because once you just said, yeah, you guys killed George, I didn't question it. I was like, oh, thank God. I'm glad that we know.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt like it was worthwhile, especially because like there was like the anticipation of, did we kill him? Did we not? And then the reveal. I think it worked out fine. There was another one actually when towards the end when you guys were like, so where is Billy? I was like, where is Billy? For a minute, I was like, is he on the train? It was like Schrodinger's Billy for a minute, but then I was like, no, wait, I have something prepared for this, kind of. I've got something in the back pocket.
Yeah.
And I think that's like probably the biggest takeaway from this. The biggest lesson I learned is like always have like a get out of jail free card, the ace up your sleeve, something that you can throw on the table no matter what happens, just in case. But default to your gut in the moment, all others being equal.
Sweet.
Yeah. So you want to get into E&E?
Yeah, I'll speed through my campaign diaries here. So I'm pretty sure that last episode we talked about the wedding massacre. Basically, the party kind of stumbles onto this conspiracy of exotic animals being ported into the Gardens district. They poke their nose into it a little bit too deep, and this mob boss tells them, he's like, you guys are security detail. You're going to make sure that this trophy hunt goes off without a hitch, because it's really important for my enterprises. And the party being comprised of, generally people of good virtue, saw these like business magnates, just riding like giant birds and clubbing small creatures.
I was like, there's no way I can just let this happen.
Which is fair. Like, I'm glad that you guys decided that, but I'm like, you know what? No good deed goes unpunished. You guys have now pissed off the mob royally. So I decided, I was like, you know what? Next session, I think you guys can infer that something bad is going to happen. I'm just going to let you guys do whatever you want. Do whatever you want to prepare to get stronger. I fleshed out a few fighting styles, combat masteries, so that if they decided to learn a little bit of martial arts, they might be able to defend themselves in the next session. I figured, I was like, these guys know the Garden District. They're probably going to hang out around the Garden District. So there was this old bum that I had, Tex Zalvo, and he kind of does like alchemy stuff on the side. He had sold them a snake anti-venom in session 2 or whatever, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna design an entire like shop inventory for him. One of the big differences in Epics and Emprises is that a lot of effects that would be in the enchantment school in Dungeons and Dragons don't really port into my hard magic system. So instead, we've got drugs. Potion of speed, well, that's just cocaine, baby. It'll give you the same effects as the haste spell in 5e, but it's not magic. It's just drugs. Potion of sleep, we've got all sorts of barbiturates. Barbiturates, I'm not sure. Whatever, not to spoil too much, but yeah, these guys totally didn't even go to the Garden District. They were just like, you know what? We got to find like a town map. I don't remember why, but you guys were looking for a town map. And I made the mistake of name dropping the Scholars Guild 3 times. It just sort of came up. I was like, yeah, these guys aren't going to look into the Scholars Guild, whatever. But of course they go there. And I'm like, oh, damn, I got to play for some time. So, no, I totally talked about this in the last episode. I gave them the look and say sequence to buy for time. They got in, blah, blah, blah. Sorry. I'm like rehashing from last episode. All right, we're just gonna skip. But yeah,
well, it's important for the setting up what happens next.
Yeah, basically they just kind of like, I'm not gonna say waste the session. You guys got to see some things and learn some things, but in terms of preparing for their encounter with the mob, like they did not accomplish much.
Yeah.
So pretty much after the wedding massacre, I decided, I was like, you know what? How am I going to punish these guys? They owe a blood debt to the mob. They owe a blood debt to the mob. The mob, the next session is going to start out with the mob meeting up with them and demanding a payment in blood. So at the end of the session, the previous session, they had taken off in their new sloop, and under the deck, Josh's character Kylian finds a black box. This new session starts out, she feels like she gets a feeling that magic can be channeled through this box if she were to just kind of let it flow. And she gives it to Callum, of course. Callum channels magic through the box, and in glowing red letters, it reads, "A blood debt is owed," with a mark on a map, and says tomorrow night. So they go to this mark in the day. They kind of case the joint, and they see that it's the headquarters of the Every Few Daily newspaper, which is a little bit of a callback to a newspaper that runs at University of Michigan called the Every 3 Weekly. But of course, I haven't decided if this society groups time in 7 days. I don't know if week is something that even makes sense. Nothing is on a regular schedule. And that's, in part by my own unwillingness to decide on things, and in part it's kind of become the theme for this city, Cavalosa, where there's no bureaucracy, there's no regularity, and it was like totally improv by my not knowing these things and not wanting to decide them. So they go to the cafe on the bottom floor of the Every Few Daily headquarters. They ask around a little bit. They're not finding much, so they're like, screw it. They go to class for a little while and then come back at night, and a few mobsters walk into this building, walk out, and they're carrying 3 large urns, each of them with a volume of 5 liters, which is the volume of blood in the average adult human. And they present them to the party and say, you guys have 3 days to fill these urns with humanoid blood not animal blood, will know the difference. And if you guys can't meet your quota, you're going to have to split the difference. The remainder will be brought up by your own blood. So the party freaks out, and pretty much at this point, I was like, if somebody gave me a giant urn and said to fill it with blood, what would I do? I'd go shank some bums, like it's a well-known fact that there are a lot of bums around town, and I love them. They wouldn't be there if I didn't love them, but it's the kind of person who really can't do anything about it if you shank them and take maybe 200, 300 mils of blood. I'm not saying kill them. You bandage them up, leave them in the alley, and hope they find their way back. But no, these guys decided, let's get blood from dead people. I was like, well, shit. So I had been thinking, maybe 2 or 3 times in the shower, I was like, where do dead people go here? This is a pretty big city, and it really doesn't have a lot of land area, especially being in an archipelago type setting. So it kind of made sense that there was a catacomb, and that was sort of made concrete this session. Through a series of events, they ended up with an extended party of the college librarian and 3 goth kids, and they were able to create a diversion and distract the mortician and sneak past him into the morgue and enter the catacombs through a lift in the corner of the basement. The extended party kind of splits up, and our 3 are like, you know what? Let's chop a head off a random body and try to take the blood. Let's just get this over with. But it can't be that easy.
It's never that
so
easy.
they decapitate one of these cadavers, and it's dry, no blood to be found. For some reason, they decided to go back upstairs into the morgue, and they come face to face with the mortician, and somebody screams, "Pin him," which to me means combat, which to me means this mortician has got to fight or flee. And for whatever reason, he decides to stand his ground. They try to pin him. They knock him down, but it's a little bit unsuccessful. And what happens is that the mortician works his way onto the lift where only Kylian remains. He cuts the rope, and the 2 of them fall into the catacombs. Sam's character, Ollie, slits the wrist of the cadaver on the table and finds that there is blood in it, and he starts to collect that while Callum, Houston's character, hops down the lift shaft, takes some fall damage, and decides to help out Kylian. He casts a new spell that he's learned. This session took a lot of prep on fleshing out specific spells and mechanics, and I'm sure I'm going to have to tweak them over time. But Callum used Flash, which is essentially a bright flash of radiance. But instead of visible light, he uses ultraviolet light, which he has just learned. And when he does, he's trying to temporarily blind this mortician. The mortician makes his saving throw to look away, but Kylian doesn't. So she's blinded, bumbling around the catacombs. The mortician books away, and Callum hot in pursuit. Callum makes a swiftness roll, manages to stay right on his tail, so the mortician realizes, I'm not going to escape this guy. He turns and faces him, scalpel brandished, and takes a couple of swings and misses. And Callum, cold clocks him with his shovel. The extended party regroups, and they try to get out of the catacombs. Sam's character, Ollie, I had him roll a heave check, which is a strength skill, to try to pull one of these people out of the catacombs. All he had was a large sheet of canvas that was used to cover one of the cadavers, and his check just doesn't make the cut. So I ended the session with everybody except for Ollie trapped in the catacombs.
Yeah, we were able to siphon some blood from those goth kids.
Yeah. A blood pact.
Yeah.
So they got up to an even 5,000 liters out of the, or 5,000 milliliters out of the 15,000 that they need. So one of the 3 urns completely full.
Maybe accidentally sold my soul to something that I don't know about, but we'll find out.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about our respective campaigns, but why don't we just kind of like for this last segment here talk about improv. That's kind of come up a lot for the two of us in the last couple weeks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Do you struggle with improv?
Kind of, yeah. So I've noticed a lot of times in my prepping, I kind of plan point A, point B, and leave the middle up in the air. For this session, I had planned, they're going to contact the mob, and the mob is going to give them these urns and ask them to collect on the blood debt. And then stuff will happen, and then eventually they're probably going to have the blood. And then I planned out what happens once you guys have all 3 urns filled, which hasn't happened yet. That's for a future session. And it may well not happen. If you guys can't make the quota, I'm going to have to get real swifty with it. But the other thing I noticed, I was talking to Charlie a little bit last night, is for me, I care so much about the ecosystems and economies and laws of nature. And that's what I spend a lot of time prepping. And so other stuff like names and places and events really don't get as much focus. And I think that that's okay. If you make an improv call and just name some character like this goth kid's name is Blake. There's always something you can do about that. The character could say, well, I was lying, that wasn't my actual name. Or if the character isn't important enough, God, just kill him off, right? But if you make it a hasty decision about a lore thing, or about, if you make a hasty decision that violates the laws of nature, there's no going back from that. Unless you decide to retcon it, but that's kind of like, I view that as like a cardinal sin of DMing, which I want to keep to an absolute minimum. So yeah, I end up improving a lot, and sometimes things just get really, really freaking weird.
When you improv?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of the risk if you're just kind of relying on what you come up with 6 seconds to think about it.
Yeah.
Like how could you have the greatest idea in 6 seconds?
There's a font of like cursedness and darkness and weirdness that just boils below the surface, and all I need is a little bit of required improv to let it out.
Yeah, we've seen it. We've all seen it. But I think some of the really, really cool moments can also come out of improv. Like when you feed off of the energy that your players bring to your table on that given day, it kind of ensures that there's not like a kind of like a mismatched moment.
Oh, absolutely.
I found that I think that's kind of why for the Blades in the Dark session I went with mostly improvisation, because I didn't want it to be our only time playing Blades in the Dark to just be mismatched, for the players not to be really engaged.
That makes sense. To,
ensure that no matter what happened, we're gonna have a good time.
That makes sense.
As the punches came.
Yeah. And one of the nice things about using Blades in the Dark, which we hadn't engaged really with any of the supernatural elements. There's not a lot you can screw up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But since I'm like trying to curate my magic system so much, I have to be really, or I choose to be really careful. And I tend to be kind of conservative with my improv rulings. I'm sure you noticed last session there were a few times where you guys were like, can I ask this person this? And I'm like, oh, they wouldn't know it. And then I'm like, you know what? Why don't you roll for persuasion or something? There were quite a few times I just caught myself saying something, and then I'm like, you know what? Why don't you roll for it? And a few times, I changed my mind about what my initial reaction would have been.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to go about it. Honestly, like it will be hard to kind of like unlearn and like undo, and sometimes like be like, you know what, that wasn't a really good call just now. Let me try again. I didn't feel like it took me out of the session at all. Like I felt good about it. Like when you're like, you know what, actually go ahead and roll that.
Yeah.
And something else happened. I think that was great. Actually.
Yeah. I'm still getting my GM legs under me, so.
Yeah. As far as like improv goes, I really, really like being surprised. I love it. Going into a session, I'm like, I know what the first half's going to be like, but
I totally agree.
Who knows what's going to end, where we're going to end up, right?
Yeah, I mean, I really want to have a campaign that's player driven. I mean, you guys, it's your fault, all the situations that you get into.
Yeah.
And that worked out so brilliantly with the wedding massacre. I mean, they attack these rich people, and I was like, I didn't plan for this, but now I get to have like this entire arc based on what you guys have done.
Yeah.
And who knows, like maybe you'll find a way to circumvent the arc or break the arc, but I'm sure it'll be replaced by something even better.
Yeah. we'll see what happens. Like our desire to be good people can only be tempered by so much, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. And definitely another thing that I've thought is that in a world without gods, there isn't someone out there who's going to reward you for doing good. So I think it's really cool that I can kind of build with this perspective of you guys have to, like, your characters have to find their own reasons to be good people, because it's not a world where there's somebody who's necessarily going to reward you for doing good things or being good people. Just the people who you do good to will probably reciprocate, and the people who value virtue, might reward you. But there's a lot of grayness, and that's by design.
Actually, that's absolutely true. Part of the reason why we actually ended up helping the defending the animals when the magnates came was because Kylian's character is like an environmentalist, right?
Yeah.
And like Callum and Ollie,
an ecologist to be specific.
An ecologist,
yeah,
right. Callum and Ollie weren't like really about it in the beginning, but Kylian kind of like pressured us, and we really did it because we're friends with Kylian, not because we wanted to save the animals.
Which was sweet.
Yeah. It was really cool, like way of going about it. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But definitely like write problems, not solutions. Like just create the problems and let us like flounder for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I think it's so much fun. It is so unbelievably fun.
I'm so glad. Yeah.
Any other improvisational questions from the crowd?
I think the scariest moment for me is when the party decides that they want to get to someplace else really, really quickly, and like trying to build a whole city in that short amount of time, or at least kind of try and build a skeleton and kind of bring something to life, I worry that my players are going to notice that I'm sort of floundering. Do you guys do a whole lot of worrying that your players are going to notice that you're kind of trying to make something up? Are you worried that they're just going along with what you're coming up with because you had to do it on the fly and they're not enjoying themselves as much as the prepared material?
I know they are. Well, yes and no. There's so little prepared material. I mean, really, the world building is kind of like my hobby, and the DMing is like adjacent to it, right? I never want you guys to feel indebted to me for all the hours I spend searching on Pinterest for images of places, because that's that's my own thing, right? Just feel thankful for the 4 hours we play the session or whatever. But my general strategy is, if there's an NPC that, you know, I just blinked into existence, or a place that just blinked into existence, I try to divert from it. I try to, you know, if there's an NPC there, they'll be like, oh yeah, that's probably not a great idea. If they have to go there, I try to like make it empty. You know, if they go to the Scholars Guild, right, which didn't like totally was nothing more than just a word on a paper, like there is a Scholars Guild. There just aren't a lot of people there today. I try to buy for time, you know, or, you know, before I make it empty, I try to buy for time, right? These guys get to the Scholars Guild and there's a puzzle waiting for them, so that I can be like, all right, who the heck's in the Scholars Guild? Like, let's get some names going. Let's get some people going here. And once they blast past that way too fast, you know, I'm sure that, you know, Callum's looking for an economist. There probably is an economist in the Scholars Guild, but they're not here right now. And then the last thing, my last strategy for this on-the-fly world building is take a break. Oh, I gotta take a shit.
Yeah. The bathroom break saves all. It is the great equalizer.
Yeah, and the irritable bowel syndrome precedent really kind of comes in clutch at those times.
Starting to question if that's legitimate or if you just set that up. For
it's a little bit of both.
This is a tip. You guys should just all have IBS. Congratulations. This is WebDM.
I mean, you wouldn't question it if you saw the time that I just had to go and I kayaked as fast as I could, like across a lake.
Yeah, it's probably legitimate. I don't know. For me, like when my players like want to go to some place new, this actually ran into this problem really, really bad in my plane shift campaign. They were kind of plane hopping to like recover magic items that some rich person had lost, and they were like blinking into like thousands of different places like in a session, and they were like, so what's this place like? And sometimes I had to just do like the world of hats situation where the entire place is embodied by one idea. And it makes it easy to kind of like Markov chain a location almost, just by like thinking about, is this, like how does every aspect of this place embody this one idea?
Yeah, that makes sense. And you kind of do like an association map too.
Yeah, exactly. It can be kind of hard. Sometimes they do tell, but they never really get taken out of it, because I always tell them in the beginning, like, I didn't prepare a whole lot, or I'm not going to prepare a whole lot, and I'm going to feed off of your energy, right? Or sometimes I can get really deceptive with it by just copy and pasting a place from some other fictional work. Like I've used locations in Magic the Gathering.
Oh yeah.
There's like a million of them for pretty much any situation if you needed one. Some people don't feel like too good about that because they don't want to like be locked into using someone else's material.
Oh, I definitely feel that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're always taking inspiration. There's no way you can build a world that's entirely original.
Exactly.
Does it have trees? Then you're ripping off the real world.
That's my second point actually, is like, why not use places you've actually been or people you've actually met?
And just change them a little
bit. Yeah, just a little bit.
Five head.
You are totally at liberty to use anything you have absolutely experienced personally, and then extrapolate it to the extreme, to the fantastic. Right, that's what D&D is all about.
Yeah,
for me, and it makes it way easier.
For sure. All right. Any other thoughts, or should we think about wrapping up here?
We should have planned a closing to this, but I think we could just improvise it.
All right.
Goodbye.
Hey! Once we hit 100 subscribers, we'll release some merch. So subscribe, tell your friends, like, share, comment, duet.
Do it. Stitch this
video.
Put it on the gram.
Put it on the gram. Share it on the gram. Tell your grandma.
Tweet us. Do we have a Twitter?
I don't think so.
Tweet us when we get a Twitter.
Don't steal our handle, or we'll find you. We know how.
We'll know how. We can just @ you because you'll have our handle.
Yeah.
All right. See you next week.